Hey guys, my name is Paul, and this is Game Dev Paradise. Of course, that's misspelled, right? Let's just get rid of that. All right, so what's Game Dev Paradise? This is a video series that I've been meaning to make, discussing various topics in game development. Some of them are going to be just sort of not too specific about game development. Some are going to be more specific. It's going to vary by quite a bunch. For example, today's topic is what is programming? Okay, so really, the first thing I want to say is on these videos, it really should be something like this. You know, what I think, what my opinion is, what programming is to me, and things like that. So the important thing to think about or to understand in your interaction with people, I think, is that a lot of times we say something like "what is," where we actually mean is what I think something is. What I'm trying to say is I'm not an expert. I've been doing this for a while, but I don't know everything. I don't know nearly everything by far. So keep that in mind. If I say something and you disagree with it or you question it, that's great. You know, look into it, figure it out. Maybe let me know. Sometimes there's multiple correct answers. That might sound really weird, but sometimes multiple people can be right and multiple people can be at the same time wrong. So what I'm trying to say is, uh, you know, don't argue with your college professor about what is programming based on what I said. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is what is programming to me, what I think is programming as a sort of an illustration. So who is this video for? So this video is, I guess, primarily aimed at potential game developers, potential game programmers, just because that's more of my background. So I guess this will be more of the audience. Um, if you're starting out, this might be a video for you. If you're more advanced, this might not be a great video for you, but maybe you'll just kind of enjoy hearing me ramble. Um, or maybe you just want to, see what somebody else thinks what programming is. All right, so the big question, what is programming? What is programming to me? Well, over the years that I've dealt with in programming, I've kind of changed my opinion quite a lot, and I've changed my view quite a lot. From just a toy, when I was 7 years old, from like a way of just having fun with a computer, or even cheating on my homework by using a Commodore 64 to as a calculator. What you would do, you would type print 4 times 5, hit enter, and the Commodore 64 would tell you 20. So I used to use the Commodore 64 as a calculator. The Commodore 64 was this one of the earlier personal computers. I'm not sure if you would even call it that, but that's what programming used to be for me. And then um, copying text from programming magazines and then seeing a little sprite move around. That was also what programming was for me. So now that I'm older, I'm like something like 39, I believe. Uh, what I've come to kind of think about programming is that to kind of boil it down, and I have a few ideas, but one of the main ideas is that programming is manipulating data. So already we're kind of like in these sorts of vague realms here, manipulating data. Well, what is data? Data is just information, a number, 5. That's data. Um, well, how do you go from manipulating data to having video games, to having other kinds of software, having iPhones and things like that? All these amazing things. I guess that's where it becomes a little bit less vague. So really what I think about programming is, or making games, when I'm making a game, I'm using programming to do it, one of the tools, and I'm manipulating data. So in terms of game design, in terms of game development, you often have like a character on the screen, right? Like your player character, right? And this player character is just made up of data. You know, player character has 100 health points, right? The player character can move. Player character can move at a rate of 30 units per second. So all this is just data, right? So let's look at my my game here. It's called Void Destroyer. This in particular is a source code for Void Destroyer 2. Let's look at a ship. Let's look at the code for a ship. So let's look at all this stuff that this ship is made up of. It's got data of type integer. That's what this int stands for, hangar fighter position. It's got data of a ship class, either a fighter, a corvette, a gunship, things like that. It has a data called a Boolean, which stores whether this is a player-controlled ship or it's a player actual ship. So all these things up here is data that this ship has, and it has even more because the ship is a mover. And if we go into a mover is a physical object. And a physical object is actually something else. So there's all this data that makes up this ship, you know, a player's ship, let's say. And then here, in these other areas, we're manipulating data. So here we're asking, hey, if the AI is active, tell me what the current order is. So here we're querying the data. We're asking, is something active? And here we're reading the data of what the current order is. So there's all kinds of these examples here of me just creating, reading, manipulating, adding to, subtracting, multiplying data. So in a way, I think of programming as manipulating data. So to give you a maybe a little easier example, or a little more basic example, let's say you have a player character in a 2D shooter, top-down shooter, third-person shooter, first-person shooter, whatever type of game. And that player has 100 health in the beginning. We would say player health equals 100. And then somewhere down the line, maybe there's a bullet or an obstacle or an alligator or whatever, and it hits the player. And bullet damage is 10 points, let's say. What we would do is we would say player health equals player health minus bullet damage. And that would result in player health equaling 90. So we're manipulating data here, right? So we're taking the original player health of 100, we're taking bullet damage of 10, and we're subtracting from player health. So that's kind of what I mean about what is programming. It's manipulating data. And this is happening all over constantly. Data is being read, written, created, deleted, all kinds of just wild stuff. I don't want to get into too specifics. I'll probably have another video kind of getting into that. I just want to keep it sort of a little more higher level, you know, than lower level, just kind of talking about what is programming. I want to kind of introduce somebody new to programming to what programming is, or share my sort of philosophy on what programming is to somebody that maybe has been programming for a while. Yeah. All right. So now at a higher level, or should I say lower level? When we turn on a game, when we turn on Void Destroyer, actually, I'm not even sure if this will be able to record it. Yeah. Well, there's Void Destroyer. So all this is data. You're hearing like music play, I imagine. If we click a option for a menu, full screen, you know, there's a checkbox, so it's storing whether there's data here. All these different variables, these are all data that's being shown back to the player. I can go in here, I can go to sound, and I'm manipulating data. I'm turning sound off. So everything you see is data being thrown back at the player. Um, and behind the scenes is data being sort of manipulated. So here, this object is spinning, the ship. So that's data of the ship orientation, uh, told to be changed, manipulated by a certain number to make it spin. Hope that makes sense. And the really curious thing is that even beyond programming, you can look at quite a lot of different things and say that you're manipulating data just to make a game. So, for example, let's open up a modeling software. This is Blender. This is a free modeling software. It's super old. And here I can look at a ship. That same ship we just saw. Here it is. And if we click a certain button, we can grab a vertice. So this vertice is in this position, and that's data, X, Y, Z here. We can manipulate it, move it around, right? And here we can tell it that this particular area is red. So in a way, modeling is also manipulating data. You know, if you're a kind of a programmer, if you think certain ways, it kind of spills into other ways. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you never thought of art as manipulating data, but maybe that's more of a programmer thing. I'm not sure. You know, let me know in the comments. But in a way, quite a lot of our life is manipulating data or in a way being data. How you feel is data, I think. All right, so I think that maybe I kind of rambled a little too much there. So this is my personal philosophy. This is one big aspect of what I think is programming, is that it's manipulating data. Okay, so this is kind of how I see programming now. And like I said before, I saw programming as a way of having fun, of cheating, uh, on grade school homework, on things like that. So otherwise, if I were to ask like, okay, what is programming? I would say manipulating data. I would kind of give you that speech I did. And then if somebody said like, I don't really buy that, or don't you think it's something else, or blah, blah, blah. Well, the other thing I would say is to be maybe a little less vague to somebody, or a little less philosophical in a way. I would say programming is telling the computer what to do. So this might be a more traditional way of describing what programming is. So it could be valuable for me to try to introduce somebody new to programming, or interested in programming, or such a way to tell what programming is. It's telling a computer what to do. So what's really, really, I think, great about programming is that in our daily lives, we don't have that much control over other things. You know, in a way we do. With like a microwave, we can tell it to microwave something, or a phone, we can tell it to call somebody. With these devices, we actually do. But with like people, you know, you can tell your cat to do something. He might do it, he might not. You can ask your wife for something, or your girlfriend, or a friend, or whatever. And they may do it, they probably won't do it exactly what you ask, you know. But with computers, it's incredible, because with computers and with programming, you can tell a computer exactly what to do. And this is both great um, and dangerous in a way. So eventually, you know, if you're like me and if you spend probably half a decade or nearly a decade of telling the computer what to do, you can actually tell it to create a video game, and you can sell that video game on Steam, and it can be your full-time job. You know, so it's quite interesting how programming can can really change and be something else. You know, you can work on this and you can make a cutscene and make these ships with artists, make all kinds of crazy things, dialogues, right? So programming is pretty incredible in that way. And all it is through telling the computer what to do. So how do you actually do it? You do it here through code. Um, this is called Microsoft Visual Studio. There it is. This costs like, I don't know, $1,000? I forget how much I paid for this. But you you buy this piece of software. You can actually get it for free. Depending if you're a student, I believe you can get the express version for free, depending on your circumstances. So there's quite a lot of tools out there available for programming. And you go in here and you just type stuff out. You create data, you manipulate data, integer player health equals 100. You know, that's programming, right? So it's, in a way, it's very simple. And in a way, it's very complex. But really, it's taking a very tiny little simple things like this and just over time making them do fairly complex things, but still made up of really simple components. So that is another sort of aspect of what programming is using different tools like Microsoft Visual Studio, or what is that other what other tool? I forget now, quite honestly. The one Java makes, coffee or something? I forget. But you know what? You can ask Google. Java compiler. Come on. Ah. Eclipse, maybe? Ah, I forget it. Forget that. Basically, there's quite a lot of tools, you know. So programming has this sort of high aspect of what is it, you know, and then there's this question of how do you program, which I want to talk about right now. And like I said, you open up a tool, this one in particular, Microsoft Visual Studio. You type into it. When you make a change, you hit the compile button right here. That tells the computer, hey, take this code, process it, you know, build the application right here. It's gonna spit out a little window or a big window or something. It's gonna spit something out at you usually, or just prepare something, and then you can actually run your game or run whatever you're programming. It's gonna provide you with all that work up to this point. You know, right now I'm seeing whatever code I put in. And then you can test whatever aspect you wanted, you know, whatever change I did. So in a way, programming is this constant tweaking and changing of something, of code, of manipulating data, seeing the result. If does it work, does it not work, does it need improvement, does it not, you know. In a way, that's also what programming is. So if you're interested in it as a career or as a hobby, I hope that this is sort of a helpful thing. Or maybe as in a professional way, maybe you're a game reviewer and you're like reviewing games, but you're not really sure what programming is. Maybe you're a musician, and you make music for games, but you're not really sure what the programmer guy does. Or maybe you're like the idea guy, giving ideas to the programmer, and you're not really sure what the programmer does. Well, this is what a programmer does right here, you know. So this might be a topic for another video. I'm not sure how long I've talked here. I don't really want to make these too long. But basically, I guess just to keep it a little shorter, what's interesting about programming is that in a way it's constantly solving a problem, constantly making something simpler. So if I want to, for example, create a bullet that shoots out of a gun, or let's say if I want to have a little character jump, let's choose a little less violent example. So make Hector jump in a video game, right? Now this by itself is pretty complex. Make Hector jump, right? But what we're actually going to do is we're going to say we're going to boil this down into smaller, simpler kind of concepts. So we're going to say give Hector a upward velocity, you know, because that's actually what's going to make Hector jump. Because our game is a little more complex, so it actually uses physics. So we would code something like, let's just use this here, Hector's velocity Hector's up velocity usually will equal 0. Well, we would do something like if player pressed jump key, Hector's velocity equals Hector's velocity plus 10, right? So first, we would have player input, and somewhere we would be testing for player input whether the player hit the jump key. And if they did, then we would say, well, Hector's velocity is now Hector's velocity plus 10. Somewhere else, we would have a way of handling Hector's up velocity. And then we would say if Hector's up velocity is greater than 0, or actually greater than 0 and less than 0, actually not and, or less than 0, handle Hector's up velocity. So what this is sort of saying is it testing this data, this up velocity of Hector's, and if it is something other than 0, we're going to handle Hector's up velocity. Somewhere else in the code, we would say what we would do is we would have Hector's position, right? And this would be equal to, let's say, position 0. Just keep it simple. And then if Hector's up velocity, you know what? I should have made just Hector move to the right instead of up. It's a little. Let's just say Hector's moving to the right. Okay. If what we would do is we would say Hector's position equals Hector's position plus Hector's velocity, right? So now Hector is actually going to move, because then the game is going to spit out at us Hector moving. So that's kind of what programming is. Hope I didn't lose you guys at that aspect. I hope it was kind of simple enough, or you know, I hope I did a decent job explaining it. So that's what I believe is programming. Telling the computer what to do, solving a problem, constantly making something simpler. So we're basically boiling down problems to little tiny steps. Before we can make Hector move, Hector has to have a position. So we create a position. Before we can make Hector move, we have to test whether the player told Hector to move. So we just kind of keep going down that list, making something simpler. And in that sense, something complex can be created. So then at some point, you create a game, and it surprises you as the game developer. It surprises you when you go into your game and it kills you or it gets you or something unexpected happens. You know, even though technically you know everything that should happen in the game because you coded it, In this case, I'm like a solo coder, so in some little different games or more team games created by larger teams, not all the coders might have experienced all the code, but basically the game will surprise you, which is kind of a wonderful moment. So programming is also a lot of fun. It's very challenging. It's a lot of fun. It's very engaging. The other really cool aspect about programming, now that I'm just full on ramble mode, is that telling the computer what to do is really nice because, if let's say if I was making a sculpture, a physical sculpture out of wood, if I chipped off a big hunk of wood that I didn't intend to, oh man, I have to get a new piece of wood or whatever. But in programming, if you make a mistake, like just typing just gobbledygook in there, well, the compiler here is going to be smart enough to tell you, hey, this doesn't make any sense. But if you make a mistake that's sort of more vague than that, and you test it, you see there's a bug, well, then you can go ahead and you can fix it again. So programming is also great where you can make mistakes over and over. And in fact, mistakes and failures, for lack of a better word, is just something that happens before success. So I guess to sum up, what is programming? To me, programming is how I make my living, how how I'm living the dream of my 7-year-old self, making video games. Programming is data manipulation. Sorry about that. This is a live show, and I really should like mute everything before it. So sorry, everybody. Um, so data manipulation, wonderful career, fun hobby, something I think everybody should try and see if they like. Hope that maybe the person watching this might be a little motivated to check out the program if you haven't already. Thank you for watching this. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. If you have questions about it, let me know. I'd like to create a follow-up or maybe a little better video as time goes on. Hopefully my skill in video making will improve. Again, thank you for watching. Leave your comments below. Tell a friend that might be interested in what programming is. For my next video, hopefully I'll talk about how to learn programming and all kinds of other topics. So this has been Game Dev Paradise. Looks like I spelled it better that time. And my name is Paul, and I'll talk to you later.